While the Israelites were wandering in the desert, they were getting very annoyed, very tired. He had so many complaints, and they took it all out on Moses. They started whining and complaining. Well, Moses prayed to God, and God listened. Since they were complaining about hunger, every day it rained manna, which is a sweet bread from heaven, and quails, a medium-sized bird, covered the ground. God told Moses to warn the Israelites, so Moses said, "Let no one leave any of it over until morning." But the greedy Israelites stashed extra food for themselves. However, it came back to bite their own butts because the extra food stank and became wormy the next day. The problem was that the Israelites did not trust God enough that God would provide every day. "Take this extra food and hide it in our tent." But Moses said, "How do we even know that God will provide food every day? Hide it while we still have a lot. I do like chicken nuggets. I'll hide it." One day, God called Moses up to Mount Sinai to receive the 10 Commandments. He was gone for 40 days. He was encountering God in Mount Sinai. Aaron and all the Israelites waited at the bottom for him. However, they got sick of waiting for Moses. They melted all their gold and made a golden cow statue to worship. Well, first of all, remember Jacob's 12 sons? Each of them went on to have a family and made their own tribe. So then the 12 tribes of Israel were created. Those 12 tribes made up the nation of Israel. And only one of those tribes were against the golden cow. It was the tribe of Levi. Remember, they also went on to become priests. Remember the Levites? God wouldn't want this. Stop it. No, melting precious gold into a cow seems like a great idea. God's forsaken us anyway, and so is Moses. Take God's win. Give up. When Moses came down from the mountain, he was furious. So was God. Moses smashed the 10 Commandments in his fury. If you look in the background of the picture, you can see a golden cow. Except it's gray because it's a, black and white photo. Later in the book of Numbers, God had some spies sent out to scan the land of Canaan. The spies' mission was to see if the Israelites could take over the land, even with God's help. The mission was supposed to be quick, but they were arguing amongst themselves. After 40 days, the spies came back. Oh, there's that number again, 40. They really doubted that they could take over Canaan. Only 2 of the spies in all of 12 were confident that they could, and they trusted in God. God was disappointed and angry that the Israelites doubted him again, even though they had seen his power of the 10 plagues and raining food. Now you think that God must have been used to the Israelites doubting him, but there is a much bigger problem. The Israelites have lived in Egypt for so long that they still wanted to believe in fake gods, and they didn't really trust God. So, God thought of a solution. He had already taken the Israelites out of Egypt, but he had not taken the Egypt out of the Israelites. So for every day the spies spent doubting that God could give them Canaan, they have to spend 1 more year wandering the desert. And if you do the math, you'll remember that they spent 40 days doubting, which means 40 more years. And he didn't just punish the spies, he punished all of Israel, and they must have not liked those spies anymore. Well, apparently the Israelites didn't learn the lesson, because in Numbers 21, Israelites complained again about the terrible food and the lack of water. "I hate this food." "Jeff, you just said it was the best life." "No, I didn't." Okay. Then, God punished the constantly whining Israelites by sending down poisonous snakes. "Ah! I'm sorry, God. I didn't mean it. The chicken does taste good." "It's not chicken." The people repented to Moses, and God told Moses to make a bronze snake and to fix it upon a pole. Anyone who had been bitten had to look at the pole, and then they would be healed. Everybody look at this! I'm healed! Ow. I'm sick again. One day while they were wandering the desert, the Israelites complained again. They wanted water. Moses prayed to God, and God told him to speak to the rock. Water would then gush forth. Usually Moses would strike the rock with a stick once, but nothing came out, so God told him to speak to the rock. But Moses went outside and struck the rock twice with a stick instead, in front of all the Israelites. Water still came out, but Moses did not obey God. God was disappointed and angry again, so God taught Moses a lesson. Moses would never be allowed inside the promised land. God called up Moses to another mountain and showed him the beautiful promised land, the rolling green hills of Canaan. But that's where Moses died. The thing is that punishment might seem very cruel. Even though Moses had led around the Israelites for years, he would never be allowed to see what he was leading them to. Well, if you think of it like this, even Moses had disobeyed God in front of all the Israelites. And the Israelites looked up to Moses as their holiest guy, so if the holiest man in their camp didn't obey God, I'm sure they are questioning themselves if they should obey God either. And that's not what Moses' goal should be. Moses died. He appointed his second in command, who was Joshua, as a new leader. Joshua is famous for his attack on Jericho. These were God's instructions to Joshua. First, march around Jericho once for 6 days. So by the 6th day, you should have marched around 6 times in all. Of course, while you and the Israelites are marching, have priests bring the Ark of Covenant. On the 7th day of marching, have the priests carry trumpets and play the trumpets while you guys march around Jericho 7 times. On the last long note, the people should shout, and Jericho's walls will crumble. It will be yours for the taking. Joshua remained a faithful servant to the Lord and kept reminding people to continue serving the Lord. He was able to conquer land after land after land after land for Israel. Thanks to God. Now before I move on to the next character in this historical story, you must know the setting. In this time of the Bible, Israel had sinned, so God turned them over to their enemies, the Philistines. You must never cut his hair. He will begin the work of rescuing Israel from the Philistines. An angel told a woman and her husband Manoah about their soon-to-be baby named Samson. The wife was barren, so she was shocked and elated when the angel told her about her soon-to-be pregnancy. The angel told her to dedicate her baby to God, so Samson would become a Nazirite. A Nazirite is somebody that dedicates their service to God. And Samson must keep 3 promises. 1. Samson must never cut his hair. 2. Samson must never touch a dead body. And 3. Samson must never drink alcohol. In return, God will give Samson unrivaled strength. Samson's strength came solely from God and only God. One afternoon, a lion came bounding after Samson, eager to have spotted its next meal. Suddenly, the power of God surged through him, and Samson ripped it apart like paper. One day, he fell in love with a woman named Delilah. Delilah tricked him into revealing his weakness, since she was hired by the 5 Philistine kings to find out Samson's weakness. As soon as she learned Samson could never cut his hair, she had a man cut off 7 locks of his hair. Without his strength, Samson was captured as a slave to the Philistines, who was blinded and physically exerted by labor every day. But his hair began growing back. The 5 Philistine kings had a banquet to celebrate the capture of Samson. Samson was chained in public to 2 pillars to be ridiculed. The kings praised their fake god Dagon, and Samson hated it. Here's a picture to help you envision this legendary scene. Praying to God to help him, Samson pushed the pillars and the temple collapsed into a heap of rubble. The collapse killed all of the Philistines and destroyed the idols inside. But Samson also sacrificed his life. Don't confuse Delilah with Deborah though, since Deborah, or Deborah, was a very, very holy woman. Deborah was a very important prophet. At that time in the Bible, the Israelites had sinned again, and God punished them by having another cruel Canaanite king rule over them. The king's general was named Sisera. The Lord commands that you, Barak, or Barak, these names are really weird, lead an army to deliver the Israelites out of the king's rule. But I will only go if you go with me, Deborah. Fine, but you will not gain the glory of killing Sisera, for instead a woman shall do it. And so Barak led an army against Sisera's army. Barak's men slayed every soldier, leaving no prisoners, but Sisera fled for his life. He hid in a kingdom where he thought he would be safe. The queen was named Jael. They're chasing me. Please shelter me. Stay in my tent, Sisera, and I'll bring you some milk and keep you secret. Thank you, Jael, or Jael, or Jael. I don't know. These names are still super weird. However, Jael approached him when he was in a deep sleep. She held a mallet in one hand and a tent peg in other, and she drove the peg through Sisera's head, ending his life. She called for Barak and showed him Sisera's body. And with that, this concludes our simplified adventure in multiple books of the Bible.